I don't see that I fit in quite the right way, and that only that kind of person can be kind of, quote, successful.
Welcome to the SGV Master Key, a show where you will hear personal stories of triumph over failures and how others successfully navigated the unique landscape that is the San Gabriel Valley. What makes us different? Well, just like you, we have chosen the San Gabriel Valley for our home or businesses or both. We believe it is the people and small businesses that make this community great, and we love to share their stories with you. We always encourage your questions and feedback, and you can find all of our contact information at sgvmasterkey.com. Here are the hosts for the show, Russell Mono and Scott Warmuth.
All right, we're back with another episode. Thanks for tuning in. This is part 3 of Scott's episodes. And if you haven't listened to them already, there's part 1 and 2 out, going over Scott's life as a young child and then through Korea and New York, Korea, law school. And that's where we left off. So
yeah, those were identified as my 3 bold X.
Yes.
Going to New York, going to Korea, going to law school.
Right. And law school for you was a way to challenge yourself, as you said, to see if you could, I guess, endure the rigors of law school, but also you were just genuinely interested in learning law.
I went because I wanted to learn law, but it was also a test of myself, of my discipline. And could I discipline myself for 3 years?
How did you feel when you graduated?
I felt good. I enjoyed law school. I liked it. And I felt, I think I felt I should have done better.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. I think I was a little bit disappointed. But I enjoyed it. It was a great experience, but maybe disappointed in myself because I felt I should have been number 1 in my class, and I should have accomplished other things that I didn't accomplish.
Wow. Okay. So did that taint your overall experience, not finishing first?
No, it didn't taint it. But I felt it was a failure.
Really?
On my part, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, because I felt I had the ability to be number 1, and I was, So what happens in law school is in the first year, it's the biggest thing in the first year. Where do you rank in your class? And then second and third years, it's not quite the big thing. It's not the competitive thing. First year is most competitive in that way. And I think after the first semester, which is when they rank you because they know your scores, I was in the top 5% or top 10%, which would have meant, I think I was, probably like number 10 or 15 or something like that, in terms of I believe 300 or so students. Maybe I was number 10 or number 15 of those 300.
This is in the first year, after the first.
This was
ranking.
Actually after the first semester.
First semester.
Right. And then after the first year, similar in the same range.
Were you striving to be number 1?
As I think back, probably. Yes. Yeah. I don't know if I was striving to be number 1 or striving to be in the top 5% or but I'm sure my goal was number 1.
So you obviously remember that of all the memories that you could have recalled about law school, that's one of them that stands out for you.
Yeah, it does. I thought I thought I could have been more successful.
Wow. Well, this show and these episodes are to give the listeners insight into who the guest or who you are, and that's a real definite different look, right? To see someone who's successful and you hear them think that it was a failure because you didn't make number one in the class. That's a interesting perspective.
In a lot of ways, I don't even know that I look at myself as successful. So it's a concept that's worth, examining. What is successful? What does that really mean? Because there's just so many different parts of your life, different layers, and maybe you did something smart here and not smart there, and what is, it's like a carpet, it's 100,000 pieces of thread or whatever, and maybe one or two threads are good threads and some are bad threads, and that's kind of like life and success. This concept of success,
right,
is very multifaceted,
Right. I think personally for me, if I'm in my later years and my children come home to visit with their kids, I would consider that to be a success. That's something that I think is lost, right? Some people who are maybe consider themselves successful, but they're estranged from their family or their children.
That would be a big indicator to me of lack of success. I agree. I mean, family and relationships are probably the most important,
sure,
of anything.
Sure.
So yeah, I agree with that. And there's questions I have is how successful I've been that way as well. And so it's, it's very hard for me to define, how successful I really am.
Sure.
Maybe in certain areas you may say I'm successful or not. I mean, I can understand to some extent, although probably not very well, but maybe somebody could look at me and think I'm successful. I don't quite, I don't know if I would define myself that way, though.
Wow. Well, I know that you're constantly, you're always looking to learn new things, and you're always interested in stuff, and that in and of itself is a success in my mind, that you're always open to learn more, to discover things about the world and of yourself.
Oh yeah, that's real important. I mean, maybe that's why I have such a difficult difficulty with this notion of success, because I think I'm doing it wrong. I'm looking at an end product, and in fact, I know there is no end product. I'm, today, at stage 3 of 10, or something like that. And so this is why I think I'm not at 10, so I'm not successful. So I'm looking at an outcome rather than like a snapshot of a person at any particular time. I mean, if I never get to 10, that doesn't mean I'm not successful. Maybe the success is, as you say, always wanting to learn something new and always striving to better yourself. I think when I look at like my business, for instance, I think we're never where we want to be. There's always a a way we can do it better. There's always better technology we can buy. There's always better service that we could provide. There's always something better that we can do. So we're not there, we're at level 1, 2, or 3 and not at level 9, 10, or 11, but that's the goal. Just like to be number 1, right? And you end up being number 10. Well, if you didn't strive for number 1, you probably wouldn't have even been number 10, but that, I think it was Robert Browning Robert Browning, the poet, I believe, said, "A man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for?" So, there's always more. There's always more that you are aiming for, I guess. And I think that's why I'm not a success. But I think, as I sit here and think it through, probably I need to redefine what success means.
Sure. Well, you touched on your business, and you are 35 years in now with your firm, but after law school, did you open up your own firm, or?
Yeah. Well, what I did, I knew I was going to open my own firm, but when I graduated, which was May of 1983, I knew I had 2 stages I had to go through. One was pass the bar, and second, get sworn in as a lawyer, actually get sworn in. And I knew that I couldn't possibly do those 2 things before January of 1984. So I knew I couldn't open an office. I couldn't do anything until January of 84 at the earliest. That was 7 months out or so.
Why is that?
Well, because once you graduate and you get your degree, you're eligible to take the bar.
Oh, it takes...
And then you have to register for the bar. They only give it twice a year. So, and you have to prepare for it. So the earliest I could take the bar, which I did, was July of 1983, which was 2 to 3 months after graduation. And so once I studied and took the bar, I had to wait 4 months to get results. So you're still not a lawyer, you're just waiting for results. And then once you get results, then you have to get sworn in, and you have to arrange that.
Did you pass on the first time?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
I figured that, but just in case the listeners were wondering.
Yeah. It's all, you're just living on pins and needles, and you just never know, what did you pass or did you not pass? And it's really a difficult, it's just a time where you're in sort of limbo. You just don't know, am I going to have to take the test again, and et cetera. But I think many people who take the bar, and I took it with several good friends that we graduated together. And when I say I took it with them, I mean, we all were in the same testing spot. We did it in downtown San Diego. And, every day, it was a 3-day bar. Every day, at the end of the day, it was like, I did that wrong. I answered wrong. I should have done it this way, but it's past, you can't do anything about it. It was very nerve-wracking. And I remember my good friend, Doug Nicholson, who I later became partners with. And I remember him after the first day of the bar, and I just remember very clearly we used pencils, as I remember, given to us, at the testing site. And he came out after that first day and he broke his pencils. He said, I failed, which he didn't. He passed the first time too. But yeah, it's very, very nerve-wracking.
Do you remember the feeling when you got the news that you passed?
Not exactly, no. I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time. So once I finished the bar, I went back to work at a government agency in Washington, D.C., waiting to get my results. And so it would have been when I was living in Washington. But no, I don't remember specifically getting the news.
So you passed the bar on your first time, and then you knew you wanted to open up your own firm. Is that what you did next?
Yes, yeah. So I had moved to Washington, D.C. in September, after I had completed the bar, and worked for 3 or 4 months at an agency in Washington. And then after I'd gotten the news, I started to make the preparations to move back to Los Angeles to open up an office.
And where was that office?
It's funny, 2 locations. I actually opened an office in downtown Los Angeles in a high-rise, and I also opened a branch office in Monterey Park. I came back to open my office because I had been planning to go into the Chinese community to work in that community. I had a law school roommate, my final year of law school, who was from Taiwan. He was an attorney from Taiwan, and he encouraged me to open an office in the Chinese community. So I knew that's what I was going to be doing. So in January, I came back. I flew back from L.A., from Washington to L.A. I had everything I owned, 3 suitcases, and that was it. And I began the process of looking for possible offices. And I ended up in downtown L.A. in a what was very popular called the Fijian Suite. It was a group of attorneys sharing the same suite, but they were all independent attorneys, but they could save costs by, having a joint conference room, having a joint receptionist. So this was the 22nd floor of what was then called Broadway Plaza. I think now it was then Macy's Plaza. Don't even know what it's called right now. It's 7th and Flower Street downtown.
Okay, I know where that is.
Yeah, used to be a Hyatt hotel. I don't know what it is now.
Is it red brick on the outside?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that atypical for a new attorney who just passed the bar to start their own firm?
Yeah, I think it was, I would say very unusual. I'm sorry.
Mostly I understand that they would work at a large firm, sort of get some experience there, and then
they could work at a large firm if that was how they were, inclined, or they could work at a small firm. There's different approaches, but yes, it would usually be under the tutelage of someone, an existing lawyer. But since I was sharing the floor with 20 other attorneys, I did have a lot of, potential mentors and people who could guide me.
So in the previous episodes, you're talking about your search, for challenging things in law school or to find yourself. And now that you're starting your professional career, what were some of your dreams to accomplish?
I wanted sort of this undefined notion of, again, being successful. I wanted to be successful, but what did it mean in this setting? So, it's very easy. This is why I liked law school so much. It was very easy for me to define success. It was like be number 1 in your class, or make law review, or these very clear achievable steps. But I could pull out my journal from that time period, and it would list very specifically what I wanted to accomplish during by opening my own office. But the last time I looked at that was probably about a year ago. But it would be. Wow, I wish I could actually read the journal right now, because it's pretty specific. But I wanted to. I had a monetary goal. Maybe I wanted to make $1 million. Okay, something like that. By a certain date, and I wanted to. Maybe have a law office of a certain size. I wanted to be independent. It's kind of these just undefined notions of success. I wanted to know that I could support myself and live a good life, but I didn't really want to practice law. So I wanted to build a law firm, but not really be the person responsible for the work. There would be better. I wanted to get good attorneys who could do the work and do a good job at it and represent clients well. But I wanted to sort of build that, but not necessarily be the one who went to court.
Would you say that you hit most of the goals that you had set out for yourself at that time? Or better question is there a goal that you set out that you didn't hit?
I would say if you look back at the goals, I might have hit them, but I don't feel that I have. So that's also the kind of sort of the elusive nature of goals, I guess, is that you can set them and maybe you achieve them, but then you also see that maybe that was not the important thing.
Yeah. Well, speaking on success, my professor in college had an interest in expertise, and he was approached by the U.S. Air Force to develop a test to determine who was most likely to be the best fighter pilot without spending the money.
Yeah.
And he said that the way that our society defines expert is flawed. So sort of similar to our definition of success, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe our society says if you have a lot of things and you're in the public light, you're successful. But some people don't view that as success. But yeah. He said that if you say the best attorney wins the most cases, but don't the most difficult cases go to the better attorneys? Likewise with hospitals, right? If you base the best hospital on mortality or death, don't the worst patients go to the best hospitals? So in that sense, the way that we view expertise in society is not quite accurate. And then he goes on to say consensus amongst a group is often how we define most expert, right? If the consensus says this person is more expert, then we agree upon that. But he also says that if you're an outlier, if you see something that everyone else doesn't see, you're sort of just dismissed and thrown out. So,
and I think I'm an outlier. I think I don't fit in. So I don't think I fit into this society or this world, or this community in a sense. I feel I'm still an outsider.
An outsider.
Outsider, and maybe not outlier. I don't know, but I think it's just my nature. I'm just very solitary, and so I don't really see. I don't see that I fit in quite the right way, and that only that kind of person can be kind of, quote, successful. I don't know why. But.
So solitary. You would make trips to, let's say, like Vegas by yourself, and you described these trips to me. Can you share with the listeners how a trip like that would be for someone who says that they're solitary?
Well, the amazing thing, and it's not just a trip to Vegas, but a trip to New York or a weekend in Pasadena, is sometimes I look back and think, wow, I actually did not have any communication with any other person for 24 or 48 or 72 hours. I mean, actually, no interaction other than maybe at the counter, buying a ticket or ordering food. But other than that, like, actually no interaction with people, no conversation, no communication, but mostly, let's say Vegas, I would walk the strip from the Sahara to the MGM and back, or run, or but spend my days doing that and thinking, and very interior world. Yeah.
I was hoping that you would describe that, because it's not like you're held up in your room just sitting there. You're amongst people and you're doing things. It's just
right. I like New York. For me, New York is the greatest city in the world. And why do I feel that? Because I can just go walk the streets. It's a city made for walking, and I can walk from the Upper West Side to Lower Manhattan and see everything there is to see in the world, because in New York, every block, is just so different. And I don't interact with anybody. I actually don't have conversations, maybe little ones here and there, but I'm in the city of 8 million people, but I don't have to interact with anybody.
And you prefer that?
I probably prefer it, but I don't have any choice, because that's the way I developed.
Well, me knowing somewhat of how you engage with people, you don't engage in small talk. In fact, I would guess that, like me, it's something you try to avoid.
I avoid small talk. I don't like small talk, which is why I'm not good at a party or some event like that. But depending on who it is, I can engage in unimportant, nonsensical talk and enjoy it.
Okay.
But I would have to know. Usually, I would have to know that person well and already have developed that kind of interplay with them. But I can have the most vacuous, empty conversations and be happy.
Wow. Okay. So that's a definite look into your mind and your thoughts and what you're about and what you are creating in terms of your firm. And I mentioned earlier that your firm has been around for 35 years.
Yeah, 36.
36.
Yeah.
What are some of the more memorable moments in that 36 years?
You know, when I look back at my life, I just love like every minute. I mean, it's like even the hard times, the difficult times, they resonate deeply. You know, I'm very nostalgic. So I'm a very nostalgic person. So I always say I always look back or I look forward, but I'm never in the present. And that's kind of a problem. But I look back all the time. And so I just think, you know, there's these different eras of my firm. I mean, the 80s were kind of defined by what the 80s were too, sort of this, you know, big Wall Street, you know, money and big things, you know. I guess they say big hair and big, you know, just at that time, I was involved in doing a lot of federal litigation, and federal litigation would be considered sort of in a hierarchy. It's the highest level of law. So if you're in federal courts, that's the highest level of court. Not that it's a higher level that, you know, they're not ranked like that, but it's got the most difficult types of cases, and the most demanding work is required for attorneys that go to federal court. The most demanding judges that are appointed by a president, and so they have lifetime tenure, and they're maybe political appointees, but they usually are at the highest level of accomplishment and achievement. So if you're in federal court, you're just operating at the highest level that you can. And that's what I was doing at that point. And it was actually intellectual property litigation. So, and I was in a partnership with 3 other attorneys. This was our own little firm that we had formed, and one of the attorneys was a patent attorney. So he was kind of the leader. He drove the partnership. You know, it was his clients, his cases that were the big ones. And, you know, the 4 of us took on Fortune 500 companies and were successful. And we were sort of guerrilla lawyers in a sense. And it was fun. It was exciting. It was very difficult. And I thought I was going to go bankrupt, you know, all the time, because we had to fund these cases. And, you know, I would extend my credit cards to the max to support living, and then you never know when you're going to get the money back, and it was very scary. But in a way, that was the most intense time. I would say the most intense time of my law career, the 80s, from 84 to 87. And just the way I was living, you know, my friend Doug Nicholson, who I referred to earlier, we lived together up in Topanga Canyon. And, you know, it's fascinating to look back, because where we lived, we had like, I would say probably hundreds of acres of land, and it overlooked the Pacific Ocean. And it wasn't ours. We were allowed to live there by the owner. This had been in the 60s or 70s. It had been sort of the leading nudist colony in the country. And so there were, it was built around, things of comfort, I guess, swimming pool and spa and sauna and just these magnificent, the magnificent acreage overlooking the ocean. And it was all ours because the owner didn't live there, and it had stopped being a nudist colony probably, I think, 1981, something like that. And we moved there in 1984. So, all these, it's just a fantastic, incredible place to live. And it was ours in the sense that nobody else lived there. And we had all of this available to us, swimming pool, and I would go to the sauna every night. And so just this, not just intense life, but just this life of, like you could feel you were on top of the world. And I was just 1 or 2 years out of law school, and I just felt, wow, I am like, I am successful. I live in a place like this, and we were very successful in our cases, but the money was still very difficult because it seems as fast as it came in, it would go out. And then in 1986, we had what, I consider to be a real good settlement. And I felt, wow, I never have to work again in my life. Well, that was not true, but this is what I thought. And I thought, okay. And at that year, then I went and taught in China. And I lost all my money.
What did you teach?
I taught international law and contracts. I taught at a law school in China. I was invited to teach by the Ministry of Justice of China. So.
And how did you lose all the money?
So I had money in the stock market when I left, and the stock market tanked. And I wasn't earning money because in China I was earning maybe $100 a month, which was a good income, but $100 a month, and when you leave China, then, you didn't save anything, right? And so basically it was lost in the stock market, and it was never enough money that I would never have to work again in my life anyway. But I kind of thought that, maybe it would be. But
so you were like 30 years old at that time.
Yeah, I was when I went to teach in China, I was had just turned 31. So I was 20, 28, 29, 30 when I was kind of living this the high life in Los Angeles at that time. But I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't do any of that. So I wasn't involved in anything like that. But it was just like the excitement of being what felt like the top of the world, being in federal court and representing, clients against Fortune 500 companies and just, being able to go dine at these, very high-end places and know, I'll never forget the day. Nothing came of it, but it was just so exciting that the partner came to me and said, because, I'm the biggest Beatles fan in the world, and he came one day and said, well, we might be representing the Beatles, and then I saw that, it was a lawsuit, and it was because the Apple Records and the Beatles, and I don't know, it would have been maybe a copyright infringement or something, and nothing ever came of it. But it was like, wow, that would have been exciting. But we were dealing with people, and talk about Las Vegas. we would fly to Vegas for the day sometimes, and just, we'd get a room at Caesars. The Caesars would give us a room, and we would bet baseball, or, it was just like, just seemed like we could do anything,
That's a lot to take in at a young age like that.
But, as I look back, and like up to that age, 30, I was always, like when I lived in New York, I was always kind of like at the, had access to people, or the successful people, or certain stature or status. And so it was, to me, it was kind of just like a continuation of what I felt I was entitled to. But it was after that my life changed, because then I became, it was more family. And then, so my life actually became much more kind of, I was always the same person that I am now, even then. I mean, I never went out to clubs or anything like that. I was still, at night I would be looking at baseball stats or something like that. But it was a good time.
So how did having a family change things for you? It's a good question. I mean, first off, I think if I said the most precious time of my life was, with kids. So, and I think I moved to Pasadena in 93. Anthony was the only child we had at that time. He was 3. And we moved to Pasadena because we wanted to have a more family feel. We were living in West Los Angeles, which was a wonderful place. I love West Los Angeles, but Pasadena was a little bit kind of slower paced, and just easier to get around. The San Gabriel Valley, as opposed to West LA and all the freeways and all of that. It was just a much more sort of like home type base. So so the 80s were like the 80s. They were fast paced, and I didn't do any of this stuff, but just the way you picture the 80s, people on drugs and making a lot of money on Wall Street and just living this kind of fast-paced lifestyle. I had that kind of experience without the, drugs or alcohol or that sort of thing. But then 90s became much more sedate and quiet in a sense. It was family time, and Pasadena and that kind of thing. So in this journey of your life, you've taken us through different moments and shared with us your thoughts, and now you're accomplished professionally. You have a family, and I'd like to know, do you feel fulfilled in that, and what are you reaching for to accomplish now at this point in your career? But let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about that.
The legal process can be intimidating. You don't know where to start, and you're unsure of what to expect. The attorneys and staff at the law offices of Scott Warmuth have been serving the San Gabriel Valley for over 35 years, helping people just like you navigate through the legal process and ensuring you're treated fairly. You can find them at law888.com or call 626-282-6868. That's 626-282-6868.
All right, we're back with Scott. So before the break, we're talking about your career now. You've built a successful firm. You've run it for a very long time, and you've raised a family. And how do you feel? Do you feel fulfilled in those accomplishments? And what are you hoping to achieve next in your life?
I have to say I do feel a certain satisfaction, contentment, I think, is the way I would describe it. Contentment and satisfaction when I look back, but not looking forward. But looking back, I think, okay, well, I made some mistakes. I've done some things bad or wrong or, not the way you would do it ideally. But I feel I have 2 kids. Anthony, who I just mentioned, lives in Madison, Wisconsin. He's engaged to a PhD student that he has been together with for 10 years or something like that since undergrad. And so, he lives what seems to be a fulfilling life. He's right now actually wearing many hats. They live together. They have a home in Madison. He's just started law school at the University of Wisconsin, but he's doing that part-time. His main job is working for a corporation there where he's I just don't know, modern job titles and this kind of thing. So I don't even know how to describe what he does, but, he's got a satisfying career, but he's also going to law school. And as I said, Morgan, his fiance, is a PhD student or candidate in biology or cancer research or cell research, something like that. And then Tiffany lives in New York City and has graduated and went to Columbia University in New York, so lived there 4 years and then graduated, and for 3 years has been working again in one of these new world jobs that I don't even know what it is, but she works for IBM, and so she's 5 years younger than Anthony, so she's not at the same stage in life that he is, and but it's so I feel this satisfaction that they have both found a place in the world. Maybe like me, you're never really maybe at exactly where you want to be, but they're both at good points, in good places. And it's funny how for instance, I would love to live in the Midwest. So there's always been a part of me that is small town, and I wish I could live in a Big Ten college town. So, that would be West Lafayette, Indiana, where Purdue is, or Madison, or my other favorite is Champaign-Urbana, University of Illinois. Those are probably my 3, favorite places. But so there's part of me that is that. And that part of me is also Seattle, because that's where I grew up. So, and Anthony kind of lives that life. And then the other part of me is New York. And Tiffany lives that part because she lives in New York. So, they're both a lot like me, but, different parts of me.
How would you rate yourself as a parent, as a father?
I would say I was. I always considered that the most important thing that I could ever do, or that I ever did. So, but how would I rate myself? People say I'm a good father, right? But I wish I was better. So,
I expected some sort of answer like that from you.
I mean, I think the part of me that is so insular and isolated still exists. So, in a way, their mother is very important because she provides more of the sort of the emotional stuff that I don't provide as well. But I think of myself as a provider. I think I was a provider, but also I was always there. Like every day I would, drive them to school, or, I always made sure, it wasn't 100%, but I always made sure basically every day there was interaction and I was there.
And you still have a good relationship with your kids now.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what's next for Scott, and what are you going to challenge yourself to accomplish in this world? I know one of the things that you have mentioned to me many times in the past is that you would like people to know a different side of you.
I would like people to know what I really am, because I'm very good at putting up this fake me. So it's very, and that's the usual way people see me. It's that not real me, but it's that me that I have to present.
And that's the Scott Warmuth attorney law firm.
Yeah.
Running that.
Right. The shortcut would be to say that billboard, like that. It's like, I think people probably believe I'm something different than what I really am. I don't, most people would have no idea, what I think or who I am, or like that I spend all my time alone,
Why is that important to you, for someone who enjoys being alone, to have people know you at a different level or deeper level?
Well, I think I have a lot that I could present, and that's what I would like to do. So it does no good to have all of the experiences I've had, and not to, and all the learning that I've done, and not have, and not pass that on.
I see.
So it's like every day I see something, whether it's just looking that way and seeing the angles, it's so beautiful to me. And I wish I could just, like, everybody could experience that. Not just me, but I wish I could take that experience I had and, like, give it to everyone else. So I just want to get out what is in me and pass it on. I look at, I'm just holding something in trust for the next generation, which is what I learned, what I saw and what I heard. All of that belongs to the next generation, or any generation, but not. It shouldn't be. I don't want to be a hoarder. Right. I feel I'm hoarding it inside of me. So,
the idea of sharing information and consuming information is timeless. I went to, by invite of a friend, a lecture on 16th and 17th century art in Italy.
Yeah, right.
And what I got from that lecture was that people are basically the same. They want to share what they know.
Yeah.
And they want to consume information from other people.
Oh yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. The what was described in that lecture was someone developing what was to become like the first travel book. But basically, as I was listening to that, I was like, that is exactly what, modern day, let's say Yelp or Facebook is. It's the same thing, but just, presented in a different time. But before I forget, I want you to see if you'll share with the listeners. You told me once that you wanted to be a gangster.
A gangster. The type of gangster I'm trying to think of whether I wanted. Yes, these were kind of models, but these were the type of. These were more, I would say, flim-flam men.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so confidence man, con man type of thing. So like, I can't even remember the names of.
It's not like Al Capone gangster.
Not that kind of gangster, but the gangster that, but the con man, or it's a person who, I don't even know if I should say con man. It's a person, I would say more, it's a person who, James Bond, let's say.
Okay.
James Bond. Yeah. Who wouldn't want to be James Bond, right?
Right.
A person of action and adventure, but who knows how to get on in the world. And there are like Wilson Meisner. It's a name you wouldn't know, but this was somebody in the 1920s who lived in New York and Florida, and just kind of knew how to ingratiate himself into any kind of company he wanted to, and could kind of like get anything he wanted. But he was an example of someone that I just thought, wow, it must be very kind of just cool to be someone like that who could just get along in any type of company, but also he was in control in a sense.
I think you may have mentioned this person in another episode, and you described him as like very dapper.
Yeah, right.
Is that the same person?
Yeah, probably. Okay. Yeah. Because I read this book when I was like 18 or 19. It was a story of Wilson Meisner. His brother was a famous architect, Sanford Meisner, and very prominent in the 1920s in New York and the East Coast, Florida, and it was a book that really stuck with me. But there were other books like The Great Train Robbery. So The Great Train Robbery was a book about what was considered the greatest robbery, of its time in London in the 1850s, where I don't know the name of the criminal, but he planned out a perfect crime. I mean, perfect. I think it was perfect. I think he did get away with it. But it was just this most elaborate, well-timed. He had to just do a lot of research on when security guards would walk from one railway track to the other. And then he had to bring in 3 or 4 accomplices. It was really just what corporation executives do today, but it was just more direct. And then there was another. Darn it! Someone just flashed through my mind, but anyway, sort of like these people that needed to really well planned, well executed, well disciplined. events.
Wow. So that's a favorite character of yours.
Yeah. So my favorite characters would be that type of character. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, also, Winston Churchill Winston Churchill was very, incredible too. Just his stories, stories about him, he had to have his bath every day, and he would, execute these great wartime decisions from his bathtub. Yeah. Just characters. I like characters. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Characters. Damon Runyon wrote Guys and Dolls, and just a lot of like this very 1920s and Prohibition era, and just stories of these characters, that were very interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, so those are the kind of characters I like, but I have what I call my pantheon, my personal pantheon, the most important things or persons in my life. Or, I'm not talking about family members, but just sort of like influences of a bigger sort. So I've had this pantheon, the New York Yankees, okay, just this powerful, entity with Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle, and so my pantheon includes places, things, people, right? So New York Yankees, New York City, Bjorn Borg, who I consider to be the greatest tennis player ever, and he had won 6 straight Wimbledons, something like that, in the 1970s. And by age 27, he retired. He just walked away from it. And it was just this incredible. Here was the greatest tennis player at the top of his game. I think he'd won 5 straight French Opens or 6 straight French Opens, 5 or 6 straight Wimbledons. And he walked away from it all. He just retired. And Mickey Mantle, who was a New York Yankee, Paul McCartney individually, and the Beatles as a group. And and that is everyone. Yeah, New York Yankees, New York City, Mickey Mantle, Bjorn Borg, Paul McCartney, and the Beatles. Yeah. So to me, if you want to know me, know these things, because they were all like larger than life. They were all, talk about bold acts, they were all bold acts, and the best, at what they did. And someone like, the Beatles, by the time they were 25, they didn't even exist anymore. So what they did was, like, by the time they were 25, they were finished with it. It's Bjorn Borg, 27. I say 27. I'm not sure if that's quite the exact age, but in his 20s, just he had reached the top, and then he walked away. So anyway, that tells you something about me.
Sure. So you said that was your pantheon.
Yes, pantheon, the Greek gods.
So that's on a larger scale of the things and places and people that affect your life. But if you would share on a smaller scale, what are your favorite things within the San Gabriel Valley? Yeah,
definitely. And ever since you mentioned this, I didn't, we do this with all of our guests, and right. It made me think. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's not even a specific place or experience, but it's what it represents. The whole is San Gabriel Valley has been so meaningful to me, and how do I, just come up with 3 things or places? But, the experiences that maybe it started in 1984, but still exist today, like for instance, the Rose Bowl. Okay. The Rose Bowl is meaningful to me because every day for years and years, I ran the Rose Bowl, sometimes twice, but,
so for some of the listeners that don't know, what does that mean?
Oh, so, there's a path, not really a path, but there's a roadway around the Rose Bowl, and it's 3 miles exactly. So you can start at, one point of that roadway that encircles the golf course and the Rose Bowl itself. And it's a 3-mile run.
And it's called the Rose Bowl because it is a natural bowl.
Yeah, it's what do they call it? It's in the arroyo.
Right. So it's sort of like there are hills or mountains around.
Yes. And so when in 1993 we moved to Pasadena, we lived on one of these hills right over the Rose Bowl. So I was able to walk to the Rose Bowl and just run it and then go back home without having to drive. So that's why every day I ran it. And it was so meaningful to me because, I'd come home and I just always looked forward to running the Rose Bowl. And I would do it, sometimes it was in the winter, it was nighttime, it was dark, but it was still just like a special thing. And so the Rose Bowl, yeah, it's not just the building or the stadium, the Rose Bowl, but it's that neighborhood, and it includes the fact that we had a house right there, and that's where we raised our family, and that was home, and then Rose Bowl was where I would go run, and so that is a great experience. And one of the reasons I moved back to where I am right now, which is on Orange Grove, is because of the proximity to the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl will always have this special meaning for me. And also Tiffany, when she was a swimmer, she swam for Rose Bowl Aquatics. So her, aquatic center was right there at the Rose Bowl. And so every day of her life, she was at the Rose Bowl too.
Right.
So yeah, it's a very special place for me. And also it represents Pasadena, nationally and internationally. And I love Pasadena. So it's like, I'm proud of Pasadena and I'm proud of the Rose Bowl,
Right.
I'd say Monterey Park is also, it's a place, but it's also a concept. It's the place I started in San Gabriel Valley. It's the place I started my law practice. In 1984, as I said, I had a branch office at 400 South Atlantic in a building there, and until 2008. So from 1984 to 2008, I had an office in Monterey Park, and then in 2008 we moved to San Gabriel. But Monterey Park is all, there's a special place in my heart for Monterey Park because I did live there for a short period of time, very short, but when I first moved to LA, I lived in Monterey Park. And just the office was always there. I, at the same time, had an office in downtown LA and then in West LA. But, I always had a place in Monterey Park. And, it was the heart of the Chinese community at that time. And that's where I was building a practice. Monterey Park, I just think of Atlantic Boulevard and, the area around City Hall. And then we moved down to near Floral, I believe is the name of the street. It was near East LA College, down in that area for, I think 5 years we had an office there. So Atlantic Boulevard is very meaningful to me, Monterey Park, and 24 years of my life were, that's where we were building things.
Right.
So that. A third place, I'm going to say, I have like three choices for third place, old Pasadena. Another choice is the hills and trails, the foothills. And another choice is a place I can't identify, but in a sense, it's all of San Gabriel Valley. And it's the streets in the neighborhoods. When I first moved here in 1984, so I didn't know the area at all, but I would get in my car and just kind of drive the streets. I was living maybe in Monterey Park at that time, and I would just drive the streets and see. This was so I have seen this change from 1984 in the San Gabriel Valley. From those streets I used to drive, they were donut shops and Bob's Big Boy and Norm's, and these kind of West catered to the Western population, or Americans. And then it changed. So all the Dairy Queen disappeared in like 1986 that I remember in Alhambra, and then everything changed. It's now very Asian. And so I've seen these streets change, but I have a nostalgic feel for those streets I used to drive in 1984 and 1985. And, I would stop in at Bob's Big Boy and get a hamburger, or, go to a donut shop or something. And, a lot of this stuff is gone. Although I notice in parts, like I can drive through West Covina or Glendora or some of these communities, and they seem still pretty similar to what I remember from 1984 that Alhambra was, or Monterey Park, or this area. But yeah, it's a more nostalgic kind of indefinite place, So I don't know what's more important to me, old Pasadena or that memory or the foothills, but one of those would be number 3.
Well, as the host, you get to break the rule of just keeping it to 3. It's interesting though, the pressure, right? Because I guess up until today you didn't realize what the guests have to condense.
Yeah, right. It's much, but you know what? Almost to a person after the show, they have said what was really quite easy and it flowed well, and I can feel that too. I mean, yeah, there was the pressure to think, wow, what is my SGV3? But on the other hand, the flow of the show, you feel very comfortable. And I could talk about myself for 24 hours if you want to do 24 shows. Well, but it's very comfortable in that way.
Well, in the last in part 2 of your series, you had mentioned a podcast, a separate podcast describing more in detail your life and the things that you wanted to pass on. So this is just sort of like a
sampler, a sampler of what that should be like. Because I love, as I said, I love examining my life because I do live looking backwards. And so like everything in my life that I've experienced every day, it's like, it's a treasure to me.
Right.
And I may not like it today, but tomorrow I will like yesterday. But today I may not like today. But.
So if I know you'll self-analyze and critique all the things that you said and you didn't say about this show.
Yeah.
And you might not like it tonight, but you may like it
tomorrow. Yeah. Or maybe in a year. Or so. Yeah. Yes, definitely. I end up liking everything, but just not at the time.
Well, thank you, Scott, for sharing, with the listener more about who you are and revealing, those personal bits of your life.
Yeah.
It always makes for a more interesting and better show, I think, when you can be vulnerable like that, or when any of our guests can be vulnerable like that.
Yeah. It's, I think it's important. But like I said, I want to get that stuff out,
Sure.
I really do. But yeah, thank you.
Before this show, I thought to myself, you and I are just having conversations with people, and this feeling of like, well, anybody can do that. And I had to remember, like, when I'm doing my other jobs, whenever I feel like that, it's actually not true, right? Like, people may think that it's easy, but I think when I look at what you and I bring and what you can do is that it's not easy to have a somewhat of a stranger have a conversation and make them feel comfortable. And I think that you and I excel at that. When I speak to them afterwards, they feel very comfortable, and that's a real skill.
Oh yeah, it is, definitely. I don't think anybody can do it. Yeah. And I don't think I can do it as well as you can do it. And I think I could be better at it. But I still think, I think we have a certain ability to communicate amongst ourselves and then, with the third person.
Right. And then the other thing I noticed that you and I bring is, in addition to making them feel comfortable, is that it's not easy to have genuine conversation with people of all different backgrounds, of all different, interests in life, and to know just enough to have that conversation move forward, whether it's research or just life experience.
Yeah.
And that's not something that's easily formed either.
No. And I look at or listen to podcasts, or I maybe watch a talk show or something, and it is impressive when they can move a conversation and continue to move it, and it's really not easy now that I see, because there are many times somebody maybe has said something, and then I'm almost I don't even know how to respond, but you have to say something. You can't have dead air.
Right. Sure.
Right? It's really amazing. And when I listen to a sports event, and the color person always has something to say, it's really quite incredible. How is it that after every play they can come in and say something and analyze it? I mean, it is a special skill.
I mentioned that so that, we can appreciate what we bring, and we hope that the listener, that you guys can appreciate what we bring to the conversations and to the show. And we welcome your feedback. Please let us know your thoughts, good or bad. Let us know and how we're doing. And we really appreciate each one of your views or listening to the show.
Yeah, that really is important. And I hope we can hear from people, and I hope we can get good or bad.
Sure, absolutely. So anyway, thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you again real soon in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the SGV Master Key. You can find the full back catalog of the SGV Master Key at sgvmasterkey.com and wherever you get your podcasts. This show was produced and edited by Russell Mono and Victoria Allers of Kind Monster Productions. Thanks again for listening or watching. We'll see you again real soon in the next episode.
Nice mother. No, kind mother.